We're good?
Wait till it comes up, I think there. Okay, you should be.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Malcolm Graham, Chairman of the City of Charlotte's Jobs and Economic Development Committee, and welcome to our Monday, February 6th meeting here at the Government Center in room CH14. We thank those who are viewing with us via the internet and those who are present in the room. We'll start the meeting by introducing the council members who are here with me in CH14, and then we'll introduce those who are with us virtually. Again, my name is Malcolm Graham, Charlotte City Council District 2, Chairman of the City of Charlotte Jobs and Economic Development Committee.
Ed Dragas, committee member.
Victoria Watlington, District 3.
Thank you. Councilmember Ashmere will not be with us today, and Councilmember Molina will be with us within the next 10, 15 minutes. So could we start by the left side of the room and introduce those in the back of the wall, and then we'll circle the room, and then we'll get started.
Brent Cagle, interim CAT CEO. David Lynn with the Charlotte International Cabinet. Juan Garzón with City Charlotte Economic Development.
James LeVar, Charlotte Sun City Partners.
Alan East, Dark Interests.
Jay Lavelle, White Point Partners.
Todd DeLong, Economic Development.
Anna Schloinis, City Attorney's Office.
Eric Spanger, Business Journal.
Natasha Smith, Charlotte Business Inclusion.
Lauren Livingston, Office of Constituent Services. Alexis Gordon, Economic Development.
Erin Gillespie, Corridors of Opportunity and Economic Development.
Pam Young, Economic Development.
James Carter, Economic Development.
Braxton Winston, Mayor Pro Tem.
Tracy Dodson, City Manager's Office.
Christina Thigpen, Economic Development.
Holly Eskridge, Economic Development.
Thank you.
Sorry, Lily Stone, Economic Development.
Welcome everyone, and we look forward to today's meeting. We have two agenda items, ARPA funding recommendations, as well as the Hornets Practice Facility. I will introduce our Tracy Dodson from the City Manager's Office to introduce the agenda and get us started.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Graham. We're going to start with the ARPA funding recommendations, and before I turn it over to the team, just want to remind everyone, we've been kind of taking the ARPA funding in tranches, all with the anticipation that this next bulk would have a lot to do to fall in line with the Hire Charlotte recommendations, along with some other things that we have heard along the way. And so we want to kind of put those out for discussion today, and I will let Christina start with the parts around Hire Charlotte.
Thank you, Tracy. Next slide, please. So we're excited to share our recommendations for the second tranche of ARPA today. They center around Hire Charlotte and our workforce development efforts, small business support, and corridors of opportunity. And we're really excited to gain your feedback. We want this to be a conversation and look forward to your thoughts. Next slide, please. Before I get into some of the Hire Charlotte implementation recommendations, I just kind of want to level set with some background on Hire. We've been working on this collaboration for a little over a year and a half, gathering the entire employment ecosystem, so everybody from employers to workforce development partners to educational institutions to economic development partners, to really be more connected and coordinated. We recognize there's a lot of incredible work going on in this area, and we want to integrate those efforts and really maximize resources and not duplicate any efforts. So the mission of Hire is really to increase the impact of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg's employment ecosystem on creating good job opportunities for our residents to really drive economic prosperity. And here's a snapshot of some of the organizations that continue to be working with us. We had a steering committee initially of 25 plus leaders across the ecosystem that developed this framework with us. And then these are really the organizations that make up something that we've been calling the coalition, that meet regularly, and we've developed some work streams to hopefully carry out all of these implementation recommendations that we're going to be discussing today. This slide is an illustration of the implementation recommendations from Hire Charlotte with also the proposed respective ARPA recommendations from the second tranche. So I'll be spending some time on each of these, but in summary, we'll be talking about an employer job seeker connect. Previously, we've spoken about this as a portal, but really it's a community-facing website as well as physical components. Also some universal soft skills training, universal technical training as well, and something we're going to introduce today about a grant opportunity for housing and workforce collaboration. Next slide, please.
So I'll just interject really quick. Just remembering that when we had the Housing and Jobs Summit a couple of weeks ago, kind of council really discussed where we were going with these recommendations. And so that was, now this next step is putting some funding behind those recommendations. Sorry, Christina.
Thanks, Tracy. So the first recommendation is centered around essential skills. Essential skills are critical to preparing individuals for an ever-changing workforce. So examples include communication, teamwork, adaptability, problem solving. And we want to partner with Goodwill on developing a marketable skills curriculum. This is really about universal soft skills, and the virtual component really adds an element of flexibility to this proposal. So there's going to be a lot of front-end research going on, feedback from employers to help design and develop this program so that it can really be sustainable and scalable. And this is an example of a core curriculum that keeps in mind beginner, intermediate, and advanced job seekers. And Goodwill's identified a tool called Parent, which is a research-based approach that focuses on essential skills that allows learners to really best understand and advocate for themselves, engage with others, and remain competitive. So this is broken down into essential skills, employability skills, and digital skills.
So one of the things that I would just add into this, and sorry for interjecting again, but you know, as we worked through Hire and we worked with our partners and we came up with these recommendations, it's almost like we have almost subcommittees, if you will, of people who are already working in this space, and how do we leverage the knowledge and what all these other groups are seeing as well, to keep that collaboration, again, but to deliver the best product to the community that we can.
Yeah. I think that's a great example, Tracy. Mecklenburg County is a great partner, especially in this recommendation, because they've, you know, been very involved in WorkSmart, which has been an essential skills training for years. That's been great, but not as flexible as this option. So we really are excited to rely on the partners. We also want to do an 8-week pilot to test it and make adjustments prior to fully rolling it out to individuals. Next slide, please. And then technical skills goes hand in hand with essential skills. I think we've talked before when we've talked about Hire Charlotte about the target industries we've identified. These 6 industries on the screen, finance, technology, business management and administration, transportation and warehousing, manufacturing and life sciences were chosen from a business recruitment lens. So these are industries where we have a lot of natural engagement in business recruitment, as well as emerging industries such as life sciences with the Pearl Innovation District. So we really want to come up with a specific plan for each industry so that we can identify the core hard skills needed in those industries and defining the base level of skills needed for those occupations. So we're looking to work with UNC Charlotte to really map out an inventory of all the technical skills training that exists, what are the gaps, what are the programs that are really showing results so that we can make the most of training investments in these areas. Apprenticeships will also be a key component of the technical skills recommendation. We know that there's been a lot of success, especially in the manufacturing sector, and we want to apply some of those success stories to the other target industries and really help eliminate barriers to participants so that we can drive participation in this option to increase technical skills. And then with Renew, we hope to continue to develop competitive skills for career growth and job attainment for our residents. So we're exploring some additional industries. Some of the conversations we've had so far are around occupations in electrical vehicle manufacturing and maintenance. and commercial building management. So we see doing an RFP process to uncover some additional possibilities for Renew. And then reskilling. This work really builds on the essential and technical skills training, and this was recognized as a top priority at the Housing and Jobs Summit. So partnering with employers will really be key to this component of reskilling of technical skills, and developing training programs for use within the workplace to upskill and reskill employees for future jobs is critical. An example that I'd like to bring up, of course, CELC will be a strong partner in this area, but I'd like to bring up an example with CALE, the Council for Adult and Experiential Learning. So last week, Truist Foundation announced several big grants, and one of the recipients was CALE. And they're really looking to develop pathways in the financial sector. And so we're really excited because we think we can build capacity in this area and collaborate a lot with Hire Charlotte, an example that has had a lot of success in other markets across the country is BankWorks. So basically, it connects young adults from low-income communities to employers in finance and creates access to careers for them. It's an 8-week career training program that offers placement assistance and ongoing coaching so that they can be successful in the jobs that they earn and then can continue to grow in those areas. So we're really excited to build capacity in that area and maybe use that as a model as we look to apply similar training for our other target industries. And then our Employer Job Seeker Connect. This is really a one-stop resource to connect the job seeker and employers from everything from job opportunities to training. And again, this is for a physical and web presence. When we've come here before, we heard you loud and clear. We understand. We want to be where the residents are. And so we've had multiple conversations with the county about using existing resources such as community resource centers, the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Library System, and really being where the residents are so that everybody has access to Hire Charlotte, whether it's the community-facing website or the resources that are important to them when they're looking for a job. And to reinforce our commitment to physical locations, we recommend supporting Charlotte Works Career Advisors Program. So currently, Charlotte Works has career advisors strategically throughout the community, including locations at the Goodwill Opportunity Campus, Mecklenburg County Sheriff Office, one of the CRCs, I believe a library in Steel Creek. So we really want to help expand into the corridors with their Career Advisors Program because residents can get all the programs and services that they would at an NC Works Career Center in their community. And we just think this aligns well with our corridors work and again, reinforcing the importance of meeting those residents in their backyard. And then on the heels of the Housing and Jobs Summit, we wanted to do something to demonstrate the connection between linking housing and jobs. And we know of several organizations that could be a good fit for this opportunity, and we're really excited to see the response that this could yield. And if anybody has any questions or if we want to get into small business.
I want to pause here if we can, because there was a lot of conversation around workforce development. And so before we pivot to this new topic, are there any questions, comments, concerns? Mr. Drex.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So I've often expressed the opinion that investment like this can lead to better outcomes than just investing in affordable housing. We have very large financial commitments to our affordable housing priority. To the extent that we can get people to a point where they can pay for their own housing, their lives are better than having someone else help them pay. So I guess what I'm wondering here is, are these initiatives resource constrained? Like, if there was more money, could we do more? Or would it not be possible to absorb a larger investment at this point?
Potentially, I would say with some of them, you could probably do more with more, right? Some of these that we want to build out, we want to kind of track the success of it before we go too far and make
Yeah,
sure that
yeah.
we're on the right track. The other piece is we want to leverage others' funds as well, some of these partners that we're mentioning and some of their resources as well, too.
No, I always felt that our investment could be like a mobilizer for other things. And CELC, working on these programs where employers commit to hire people. So I just want to make sure that we're taking full advantage of the opportunities that we've recognized in this space. And appreciate that. It says $2 million for apprenticeships. So is that a European model type of apprenticeship, like the ones the German companies do? Is that what we have in mind there, or is it not that specific?
Not that specific. Obviously, there's a lot of success in that model, but really modeling after the apprenticeship NC plan, and any company that wants to participate and follows the guidelines within the state program and has a job at the end for the individual, we're game for. So.
And then finally, how do we actually connect with candidates for these services? So what is our effort through which we make the availability of these services known? Or can we go places like into schools or wherever else and drum up some business for these programs?
Absolutely. We expect CMS to be a big partner. I mentioned we've created some work streams that we hope to implement these recommendations through, and one of those work streams is community outreach. So the focus of that group will really be getting out into the community and making people aware of these opportunities.
And I've said before, I think Charlotte Works is a great resource for the kind of thing we want to do, so I'm glad that we're partnering with them. Good job. This is exciting. Thank you.
Can I just also add to that, though, what Hire Charlotte did in really bringing together all the partners just gives us that much more ability to create the awareness, right? Working with all those partners. Then, when you layer on other initiatives like corridors, and we're constantly working with different entities that might not have been involved with Hire, but are out in the corridors and making sure that they hear the message as well, or we're looking for opportunities to put these types of resources out there.
Excellent. Exciting. Thank you.
Councilmember Wallington.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions. Councilmember Driggs hit on some of them. I did just want to know, just because I didn't see it, is Johnson C. Smith also a partner? I saw UNC Charlotte, I saw CPCC, but I didn't see Johnson C. Smith on that one slide. So I just wanted to understand if there was a role for them.
Yes, Johnson C. Smith served both on our steering committee and our project management team. And as we work on the work streams, I think it would be good to re-engage them in that capacity to continue their partnership.
Councilmember Washington, the partners that you saw called out on that, that's not all of them,
Yeah.
right? That was just kind of a sampling of some of the ones that we had worked with.
Okay. My next question or comment rather is, I appreciate seeing how you all have split up the dollars. I really am very interested in the pipeline development piece, and following up a little bit on what Councilmember Driggs talked about. I think that we have programs even today, but connecting those to the people in our neighborhoods that may be looking for work and just are not even aware of things that are existing. I'd really like to see us flesh out and get really intentional about how we do that. How do we reach out to folks? I'd like to see some funding go specifically to that outreach, particularly for two areas. We talked about CMS, so obviously we want to make sure that our students have pathways, because that's the bulk of where folks are coming from. But we know when we talk about economic mobility, key populations that end up falling behind, folks who are re-entering the population after being justice involved, and single women, single mothers. So I'd like to understand a little more detail about how we're getting very specific about those two populations, because if we're trying to impact economic mobility, we know that those are two of the larger groups that we should be investing in if we want to close that gap. So I just wanted to hear a little bit about what the thoughts are in regards to pipeline development, or really just an understanding that these two groups need particular attention.
I think that's a great point, Councilmember Watlington. And as we hopefully get these implementation recommendations moving forward, our work streams can really take a deeper dive in making sure that those target audiences have customized resources available for them.
Yeah, so thank you, because that for me is going to be a decision factor.
Okay.
The next thing, As far as the housing and jobs integration piece, so the slide that I'm looking at here, I did hear Councilmember Driggs ask about, can we do more with more? I see $600 set aside. My assumption, and I'll ask for a confirmation, is that there are already dollars for housing over and separate and apart from the dollars that you're asking for economic development.
So yeah, and this wasn't, this 600 was intended to be a new grant program that was for workforce development solutions that might also think about how they're connected to housing solutions. So the money isn't necessarily intended to be for housing. It was more around workforce development, but it's also, again, it's more specific to how the housing and workforce development of jobs is integrated. So again, new kind of concept, but it was building off of some conversations that we've had out in the community with different organizations, also coming off of the Housing and Jobs Summit. So that's why there's not a lot of money connected to it, is we wanted to see, is this an area where we can grow into?
Okay, so I would love a little bit more. I know we're at the beginning of it, so it's really just a recognition that, hey, there's some work we want to do. I'd love to understand a little bit more about this as we think about what it really would take to fund something meaningful. To your point, we've got housing dollars for the built environment, but what does this really mean, right? Is it transportation dollars? Is it particular staff at a place-based kind of program? What I'd like to understand a little bit more about where we think this is going so we can make sure that we are funding it right. And then last two things, from an apprenticeship standpoint, I know that we have spoken often about the seeming disconnect between people who are graduating from our programs and employers' willingness to place them based on their skill set. Did I miss it, or is there somewhere in which we are spending some kind of effort and energy on making sure that the curriculums at our workforce development providers are delivering the market needs specific to actual jobs in our community? Because that one seems to be a recurring theme that threatens to dilute the effectiveness of our program. So I just want to understand what the path forward is on that.
Yes, well, we've had conversations with CPCC locally to find out the success model of some of the programs that they've worked on. We're also going to be leaning heavily on Apprenticeship NC and their model in terms of how they track results and making sure that, you know, the program, that's a successful program. So emulating that will be helpful at the county level to make sure that we're measuring the success of those participants and their ability to continue on with those companies and in positions.
And then finally, you mentioned the county, and that is a segue into my last question. We know that people are crossing our city limits for jobs, right, in and out of the city. And so as we think about this workforce development, even when we think about what we're able to compete for from a site selection standpoint, we know that we have access to a broader region of talent, and our residents have access to a broader region of jobs. How are we engaging our regional partners in this effort?
So we wanted to start with Charlotte-Mecklenburg and really come up with an implementation recommendation that worked. Hire was always designed to be scalable. So we've had some conversations at the regional level. Obviously, the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance has been involved on our steering committee, and we hope to get them involved in our work streams, especially utilizing their talent education council as well. And then, you know, hopefully getting some quick wins at the local level so that we can continue to scale higher.
So for me, I think we need to begin with the end in mind. So rather than starting with Charlotte and getting kicked off and then trying to engage our regional partners, I'd like to see our strategy build in a regional focus from the beginning. So I would look forward to understanding more of that on the front end. Thank you.
Councilmember Winston, and then we'll let you finish your presentation. You're right in the middle of it. But I think I intentionally paused here to ensure that we're all on the same page, because I thought we were on the same page last week in reference to workforce development and the work that we did at the Job Summit. So I'm making sure that we're dotting I's and crossing T's, and we're delivering what the council wants. Mr. Winston.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, in the spirit of that, I just want to lift up one thing I think that maybe was part of the disconnect is that urgency.
I guess I have a comment. and it might be a question. So it really is about slides 5 and 6, and it builds on what Mr. Driggs and Ms. Watlington referenced around apprenticeships and really around, what something I keep harping on is the trades. There is the criticisms or feedback that I'm hearing from employers, as well as employees and the ecosystem, that folks are graduating certain apprenticeship programs or workforce development programs in the trades, and they're not getting the essential certifications that make them employable on work sites or desirable to employees, right? For instance, I've had one of our important partners that we have given economic incentives to, has come from different parts of the country, has said, how do I find an electrician? The electricians that I'm finding, right, are not having the certifications that I need to run my facility, right? So they're asking me to make with them certain connections. So while I'm not necessarily trying to say we should get rid of certain partners, I want to see our partnerships expand. And that's something I'm not seeing here. To get those certifications. So, for instance, I've been beating this drum for several years. The Southeastern Carpenters just recently opened a huge training facility that is incredibly ran and useful up in the university section. We have IBEW Local 379 that has incredible apprenticeship programs that are putting people on the jobs right now. We have the Iron Workers, 848, that have a training center right down here, right near the airport. And these are all, again, apprenticeship programs that are getting people paid and placed in jobs. And I don't know why they don't show up on our partnership list, right? I even think about this as obviously not a labor organization, organized labor organization, but The Rock has a pipeline into the school system right now. How are we kind of leveraging that and the relationships they have with people that we have relationship with to get those trades, those trade organizations and those trade training programs producing, at a higher level. And I just continue not to hear any kind of feedback as to how we're interacting with them. And it honestly, it does get kind of frustrating. So why aren't we doing that? This is not a situation where we're collectively bargaining. So we're not prohibited by law to interact with these organizations in our community. Why don't we take advantage of the folks that are right here in our backyard?
Well, I think our Renew program is a really good example. James, I don't know if you want to speak to some of the partnerships there.
Sure, I'll be glad to. James Carter, Economic Development. I work directly with the Renew and the Hire programs. So first, our strategy for Hire is focused on our business recruitment lens, so those 6 target industries. However, Renew provides opportunity for expansion. One of the things that we are doing this year is we are adding additional accountability measures in our contracts with our partners such as Goodwill and Urban League, and we're going to issue an RFP to find out, as Christina shared in her presentation, what additional verticals that we can expand. We are committed to working with any partner that wants to support the city of Charlotte in this effort. In order to do that, we have to reach out and connect with them, and we are doing that through the Hire Charlotte initiative. Hire Charlotte has really helped support our workforce ecosystem in having collaboration that's been unprecedented. And so I appreciate the feedback, and we will be very mindful. Thank you.
Okay. I don't think that was necessarily a direct answer. But
Well, I will share, James mentioned I wanted to highlight Renew, but then also with Hire Charlotte, we mentioned we wanted to be scalable. We wanted to start with the target industries from business recruitment. That's not to say we're not going to expand into these other areas, but this was just the beginning of our effort. So I appreciate your feedback, and that's definitely something that we can look into as we build out higher.
And it's noted, Mr. Winston, in reference to a part of my summation, so that thought won't be lost. Ms. Molina, then we're going to move on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief because I really agree with what my colleagues have said. I mean, they've brought some additional, areas of opportunity to the table. The only thing that and first of all, let me make sure that I'm on the record absolutely clear in telling you that I am a big fan of hire. I think that the opportunity for a human being to be tooled with a skill where they have their own capacity to change their life is amazing. There's nothing like it. And so I think we have some takeaways to make this the best program that we can make it in order for the greatest outcome. The only thing that I would also add, and I want to lift up something that my colleague Dante Anderson said during the Job Summit, is that we have to make sure we're also keeping in mind the jobs of the future. And I imagine that that's somehow connected to the CMS piece of this, because if we're tooling, our young, men and women to take on what's going to be, then those would be taking into consideration what the jobs of the future would be, whether that's technological, I'm sure we have trend data, so I don't want to try to be specific or say that I have command of what that is in particular, but my imagination says, and she used, and I don't want to misquote her, but she used an example around the Apple relocation, and that the reason why they chose where they chose was because of the talent was already pooled in that area. So, right now I see a trend where we're looking more towards healthcare, which I have some great ideas around that as well that I would love to talk offline about, because we have some stakeholders in our community that are prepared to skill our community, adults even, for some critical workforce needs in that area in healthcare. So we have two major organizations, and I'm sure there are more, but healthcare is an industry that's growing, and I'd like to, like I said, speak offline about that as well. But just lifting up that I'm a fan, we have work to do, but I agree with my colleagues, and I'm just lifting up that additional piece.
Thank you very much. Please continue.
Okay.
I'll reserve my comments to the end.
Okay, I will hand it over to Holly Eskridge to talk about our recommendations in small business.
Thank you so much. So next slide.
A couple next slides.
Yes, slide 11. Yes, you went back there. There we go. All right, thanks so much. So thanks so much for having me today. We have two recommendations that we'd like to propose for the second round of ARPA funding. I'll go into more detail on the next two slides on these, but just to go high level. The first is working with CDI and then other ecosystem partners via a third-party consultant to really look at what does the small business ecosystem in Charlotte look like. Get some really good data points about that. What are the gaps, that are missing within that space? And then really be very intentional and strategic about developing solutions with that equity focus that allow us to best serve our small businesses. And really this was a shift in our recommendations that came out of the retreat, with you all stating your priority of supporting small businesses, especially those that are ethnic minority owned small businesses. We really felt like this was a critical step for us to make sure that when we are creating those strategies and those different initiatives, that we're doing it in a way that data shows us needs to be done. So Tracy, I don't know if you've got anything else you want to say on that.
I think if Councilman Graham and I were just talking about this on the way down, I think we shifted because we have seen a lot of success in working in the workforce development and job space of collaborating and coming together and developing a strategy that we think can really be impactful in working with other partners. And hearing some of the conversation last week, and Holly and I have been talking about it for a while too, there's a lot of energy around supporting small businesses in a lot of different ways. And so we really need to, I think, and we've learned a lot even in corridors, right, with small businesses. Some corridors we have better trust with small businesses to provide assistance. Some corridors we don't. And so really, we felt like it was a good opportunity to pull our partners together, internal and external, and determine if we saw very clear gaps in kind of the services that are offered for small businesses. So that's where we felt like was a good starting point.
Okay, and then the next one is to pilot an early-stage DEI entrepreneurship accelerator. So this accelerator would be focused on what we call innovation-driven or innovation-led entrepreneurs in Charlotte. With things like the Pearl Innovation District, Charlotte continues to be on lists as far as, a fintech strong city. And then actually, I know James is here with Center City Partners. There's been meetings around doing a tech type district in the North Tryon area. So things like that really are where these innovation driven or led entrepreneurs fit. This space is not typically one that has a ton of diversity. And so we feel like it's very, very critical, especially since we have this ARPA funding, for the city to pilot something, an accelerator. We'd like to go ahead and go to the next slide, because I'm getting into the next slide. So what we do is we'd like to pilot a nationally recognized early stage accelerator that has a track record of focusing on DEI programming. And we want to do it for 2 years. And so this ARPA funding would allow us to be able to do that. This would be open to Charlotte-based companies. We would be focusing on MWSBEs. The accelerator would help 25 to 40 companies per year. We will use an RFP process to select the firm that would do the accelerator. And the budget estimate is for that 2-year pilot period. So really what we want to do is show a proof of concept to really get some data to understand that this is something that is successful in Charlotte, that addresses the needs. Honestly, I cannot begin to tell you in this space specifically how many people, myself and then Juan Garzon on our team, have talked to that are ethnic minority founders in this innovation-led space that have left Charlotte because they don't have the support. They don't have the programming that supports them to grow their company. They don't have the ability to connect in with investors. So whether that's private equity, angel investing, those type of things. And we really want to be a leader in that. And this is not something that is that present in the Charlotte community at this point. All right, next slide. Oh, no. Okay, somehow we're missing one.
No, get back.
There we go.
We really talked about that one.
Yes.
On previous slides.
Correct. So this is, again, well, just to let you know, that one for the consultant, this right here, will also be a competitive RFP process as well. But it will be focused on equity specifically in the ecosystem.
So I don't know if you want to stop here again before we go into corridors, or do you want to keep going?
I think we're going to get rolled. Let's keep on.
Okay. So now I'm going to turn it over to Monica Carney Holmes. Monica is traveling this week, but she was going to go over some of our recommendations for corridors. Monica, are you there?
Yep, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Again, Monica Holmes, really excited to bring a couple of recommendations for us to have conversations around today. Within corridors, there's 2 buckets really that we're going to talk about. One is within this business support, organizational support, really growing the network of how we support small businesses and do workforce development in specific corridors geographies. And then the other is really how we integrate arts and culture into the corridors of opportunity, which if you'll remember from the state of arts and culture, that our corridors are typically areas of deficit where we don't have as many cultural resources as we do in other parts of the city. So you can go to the next slide. So first, just having a conversation around how we support the creation of commercial districts and how we provide that organizational support. You probably are aware that we have been piloting this program in the Beatties Ford corridor for a couple of years now, working with the Main Street program and launching an Urban Main initiative there that is a couple of years strong. In 2023, we will be scaling that up. So really starting to form the same level of support in organizations in a citywide network. So this funding would really serve as the foundation for how we build business district support and organizations in all 6 corridors. We're lucky in the fact that West Boulevard and Sugar Creek have already really started doing that work. They've been having regular meetings. They've been getting businesses to get excited about it, informing people of what that means, what it looks like. So we're well on our way in those corridors, and we will launch in the other ones this year. We also, and I know Christina mentioned it earlier, but we also were just recently awarded last week a Truist Foundation grant that supports this work with Living Cities and Main Street. So it'll just continue to build the work that we have already started. And that comes with some dollars to leverage this 1 million. And that'll be really focused on how we target equitable metrics, how we look at what does success look like, and we'll kind of further that, how we support our minority women-owned businesses in the corridors to really be the successful businesses that we know they are and can continue to grow. So, and then the next piece is focused on arts and culture in the corridors. And I'll just pause here that if everyone can remember the ARPA tranches that we've had over time, there was a hold for $1.5 million of corridors of opportunity, arts and culture specific funding, really from that first round. And so we are coming to y'all to propose how to spend that first $700,000 of that $1.5 million. And so we have 2 projects, 2 pieces to move forward, and then a third idea we would like to have some discussion around today. So the first piece is working with the symphony to build a mobile stage and a mobile symphony. They would go out and do 10 co-sponsored concerts and events within corridors of opportunity. The stage and the equipment will also be able to be used by local groups. We have been meeting with the symphony team regularly to really make sure that all the programming has a community effort involved in it. So how can we engage community artists? How can we integrate performances with the community into the mobile symphony? It is not kind of just their artists going out and doing shows. It's really meant to be an integrated community partnership. So we're really excited about this opportunity. We're talking to the library this week about how we can even further integrate our efforts with some of the work that the library is doing and the mobile symphony. So very exciting, kind of opening up the doors to some of our larger organizations in the corridors. And then the second piece is really focused on filling a niche of how we provide workspace for creatives in our corridors. So there's been several studies already done. One came out in the late summer, early fall of last year, done by UNCC, where one of the top 3 priorities was a lack of affordable space for creative entrepreneurs and for creatives. So we will be partnering. We do not have partners selected, but we would be partnering with people with physical space on corridors to provide supplement, basically, so they can have that creative entrepreneur studio space, performance space within our corridors of opportunity, really to support business owners in that space. So I will also just quickly mention, and I know Priya's on the phone too, we both happen to be traveling, and this is really something that she's passionate about. The third thing we want to put on your radar, which it does not come with a funding attachment, but we want to just have a conversation around it, is this idea around also having artists in corridors, where we have creatives with ties to the corridors geographies, and that we really work with them to take the themes that are in corridors playbooks and kind of lead to more collaborative projects. So those could be both integrating them into the work that's happening or working with them to help us further refine themes and the goals of each corridor. And I don't know, Priya, if you have anything to add to that, but we can also add to it or stop there. And if people have questions on any of the things corridors or small business related, we can pause.
Sure, thanks, Monica. I'm happy to just add briefly. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks for that overview, Monica. I would just add that we're excited about developing this idea for a couple of reasons. One is it does build on some work that the Corridors team already has done in some of the corridors, working with artists and creatives and arts and cultural organizations in those corridors to engage community. And so this is sort of taking it a step further in a way that also kind of evolves an idea that there is a lot of precedence for in other communities, both in municipal governments as well as even federal agencies, where artists are hosted by or embedded in agencies or departments to further the goals and objectives that are in various plans. And there are, demonstrated, impacts of having these artists and creatives kind of working in an integrated fashion. So you've kind of already heard Monica talk about how we're looking at ways to integrate arts and culture even further in the different corridors. And as you all know from the work we've been doing on the arts and culture plan, that there is a great interest among the public for that, as well as identified opportunities as far as emerging insights in how we have cross-sector collaboration in terms of arts and culture in other sectors and the other streams of work that are already taking place in the corridor. So we're excited because this would really take that a step further and have it happen in six corridors around the city in a way that goes even beyond kind of a single agency or department approach.
Thanks, Priya. If we can go to the last slide. And just really kind of next steps, we want to gain the committee's feedback and then eventually take this to full council. And then also, like we said before, and really not just with hire, but across small business as well as some of the corridors work, just to continue to have conversations with our stakeholders to maximize other investments from other resources.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I'll take some questions. I'm very mindful of the time. We have another presentation that probably will run an hour itself, and so I recognize Councilmember Drakes.
So, I already said, very excited about the workforce investments. On the early stage accelerator, is this like Packard Place, or does Packard Place still exist?
It does not exist as Packard Place any longer. The Rosellis sold that. But it would be something like, and I'm throwing out names, not because anyone's been selected, but just to give you some. So there's Techstars, for example, is one. Generator is another one. These are programs that have a national reputation. Our peer cities use them. We don't have anything like that here in Charlotte. And they have extensive experience also doing this around the DEI space.
So I just know that back in the day with Packard Place, there were a lot of young entrepreneurs that really needed very basic assistance. Like I would talk to them about, do you have a business plan? Or, you need financial projections. And they just had a business idea. So I just hope that we get down far enough to identify those people and help them. And I also want to say quickly, I like the mobile symphony idea. So I hope we can do that. I really want to move ahead with that. And therefore, I'm supportive of all of this. I'm prepared to move that we recommend the whole thing to the full council. I did have one more question, and that is, could we just get a short recap? What are the ARPA amounts over 2 years? Which years? How much? And how much is still unallocated?
Yes, we'll get the whole breakdown for you.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Molina.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm echoing my colleague here.
You should go first.
No. Actually, if I go first, you can sum this up for me. I listened, Mobile Symphony. I spoke to the symphony. I think that is a spectacular idea. I love that. It's cool. Really cool.
Yeah.
I can't imagine the little light bulbs that will switch on with that opportunity, especially in the corridors. I'm really excited about that. And I echo my colleague in the program because I also remember Packard Place. And as a previous small business owner, I remember what it was like being 10 people for myself before I was able to have the resources that it took to, grow our businesses. And so I want to, definitely laser focus on that and speak offline about some ideas that I have. But 1, 2, 3, same,
Okay, and we'll give Mr. Winston the last word, and then I'll wrap it up, and then we'll go to our next item.
Yeah, I just would like to lift up the arts and cultural piece in general. Full disclosure, I do sit on the Board of Trustees of the Symphony, and I've talked to folks over there and connected them with some folks in the community, and I think what could come out of this is going to be quite incredible. I just wanted to also lift it up to our colleagues, Mr. Driggs, Mr. Graham in particular, but all of us. This is kind of really what I meant, as I've been beating this drum about what economic development and supporting of the arts can be, and how you really can scale this up to impact people all across the city. And it's very different than, well, not very different, but different than we've supported in the past. But I'd also say that this is why it's important for us to finish up this work, so that we give staff a direction and a framework that they can come back to us year after year after year with more innovative solutions. And if we don't do that in a concise way, we limit the ability to kind of think outside of the boxes that we currently have. And I'd also like to point out that, right, this is ARPA dollars. These are things that run out. The intent of getting to where we need to get is that this will be a reoccurring spend if this is in fact a priority of council. So I just wanted to take that opportunity to put it out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we need to vote, Mr. Chair? I made a motion, but I
Do we
can
need to
withdraw
vote?
it.
If y'all want to vote to take it out of committee, that would be just fine.
So moved.
I made the motion. already,
Second?
So, yeah.
All right, discussion?
None. All in favor?
Well, I was going to make some comments, but let's vote first before I make.
Speed it up.
Yeah, let's vote before I make my comments. That might.
Councilmember Watlington is.
Yes, Councilmember Wallington.
Thank you. I did just want to make sure as it comes out of committee that the comments that were made today and the adjustments were considered. I don't want to vote it out of committee as is. I want to make sure that the changes or the input that was given today would be reflected in the work. So that's my only thing. I want to make sure I'm clear about what we're voting on.
Well, and that was going to be a part of my comments, right?
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilmember Wallington. I'm ready to move it forward with the understanding that staff has heard a lot of the comments that were made from the council members. Certainly, Councilmember Wallington made 4 or 5 suggestions that are not related to, quote unquote, the policy, but the work product, right? Expectations in terms of what would those work products look like, sound like, feel like, and how do we move it forward, i.e. making it a regional type of deal, right? So we begin to work on those things. So I just want to make sure staff heard that and that they're incorporated.
Heard loud and clear, thank you.
And for my purpose, just want to make sure that, again, that, and these are more comments. So Councilmember Wallington, are we aligned with that? Okay.
That was good. I appreciate it.
Okay, and for my purpose and for the committee purpose, and this, I'm talking to my colleagues who are here and those who may hear about this, this committee is not focused on an outcome when we walk in the room. So we would love to hear your input before the meeting, sometimes during the meeting, after the meeting, when we're at workshops in terms of the work of the committee. A lot of this work that we're talking about, at least from the workforce development side, it's already been done, right? And so I just want to make sure there's some alignment with us as a committee and the council so that we can move this thing forward. Secondly, Central Piedmont Community College does a great job in terms of workforce development, which is one of our key partners. They talk to employers every day, those who are moving into our community, about what they need in terms from employees or citizens from our community who are going there, whether it's what's happening at the Pearl and the type of certification that they need. I think Councilmember Winston brings out a key point in terms of working with unions and trade organizations who have a unique need for apprenticeship and talent to go along with what we're currently doing. We have a wealth of knowledge of those individuals on the ground, as you see our community partners currently doing the work. So I think we're in a good space. But if there's something that the committee could do better, or staff should be looking to do in a different type of way, certainly we need constant ongoing feedback and input as at the beginning versus the end, right? Because it would make everybody's life, my life, staff life, your life a lot easier. And it will make sure that as we do this, when we've already talked to a number of community partners about the direction that we're going in, that we don't stop and get off 85 and go on 77. If I can use that analogy, that they know they're both crowded, right? But I think you I think you get what I'm trying to go to, right? That we're moving in the same direction, because just a lot of people are following what we're doing, and staff has put in a lot of work in terms of getting this point, and we got a lot of resources that we're getting ready to deploy, and if we need to deploy it in a different way, you can have a seat, sir. You're welcome. If we need to deploy it in a different type of way, then we can. So I think we've already voted, right?
Well, no, we haven't yet. Chairman Graham, you said something.
All right, quickly, Councilmember Wallington, please.
Yep, I just wanted to say to that end, I think the key is going to be, like you mentioned, if a lot of the work is already done, making sure that the impact of that work is clear, right? So how do we close the loop, and not just for workforce development, but just across the board? How do we close the loop on, is it delivering what we said it was going to, or when is it going to start delivering? What are the key metrics and how are we performing against it? I think that's the piece that will help us understand if and when we need to pivot. Because I think I will all speak for myself. So for me, seeing what's being done or what has been done and connecting that to outcomes on the street that I can go and speak to for my residents, that's the piece where I think folks are going to really want to need help on. And if we can do that, then I think we'll all stay aligned, if that makes sense.
I think we're aligned. What gets measured gets done, right? So let's make sure that we're measuring what we're doing along the way. Okay, all, like to say in church, all hearts, mind, and souls all aligned. All right. So topic number 2. Vote, yes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right.
All right, moving on to the next one. This is going to be somewhat similar to what the conversation you saw that Jason Lawrence and I have this morning in the Transportation Planning and Development Committee. The first part of it will be. The second part of it will do a little bit of a deeper dive into the Performance Center and the district opportunity, the naming rights and the branding. And I've invited Sean Moran on from IPG. He's on virtually. Y'all go easy on Sean. He is 1 week into being a brand new dad. So I'm just thankful that he's with us today and he's awake. But again, this first part, we're trying to keep some consistency between the two committees. And I'll let Jason start, kind of kick it off again with a little bit of where we've gone the past month.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee. It's good to, I think, first time in front of the ED committee. You're usually at the Transportation and Planning and Development Committee, but it's good to be with you all today. As Tracy stated, I want to give you a brief update on how we came to a recommendation on the design concept for the Charlotte Transportation Center. And it's been a conversation we've been having over the years, but really in earnest in beginning in September when we came to council to talk about the various design concepts that we began a conversation with the public in October of 2022, looking at 2 different design concepts. We followed that up with update to this board and to the Metropolitan Transit Commission in late November. And then we began in January 3rd, we came to the Transportation Planning Development Committee and the full council that evening, where we presented our staff recommendation, which was the below-grade concourse option, based upon the public feedback that we had received and operational analysis of the 2 design concepts that was endorsed at both of those instances. And then we carried that through to the Transit Services Advisory Committee and the Citizen Transit Advisory Group. Those are 2 subcommittees to the Metropolitan Transit Commission. And then we presented our staff recommendation to the Metropolitan Transit Commission this past Tuesday as a staff recommendation, and they did approve that, and that is the design concept of the concourse option is now what we call the locally preferred alternative. And so that's been adopted by the MTC, and I know that's a lot of jargon to throw in front of you, but essentially that helps us have a concept we can move forward with so that we can move forward with all these conversations and ultimately begin that environmental review process, which is a part of the federal funding piece that comes with this, so the RAISE grant. We need to take it through an environmental process. So go to the next slide. That's, I think, essentially what I just said, which is that we took this to the MTC and they accepted this as their local preferred alternative for many of the reasons that we've been talking about with the public with. And with that, I'll hand it over to Tracy to begin the next part of the conversation.
Next slide. So where do we go from here? And I'm going to cover this over a couple of slides. We really want to start working towards an MOU framework. This is a complicated project, and the MOU will not be binding, but it at least starts to say that we are in general agreement in the direction that we're going. So most of you all have seen this slide before that talks about the public funding for transit and the way that we're starting to look at this. Next slide. The MOU framework will also kind of lay out some of the basic deal points. The developer will acquire the land under CTC. The city will own the transit facility. There will be construction of a temporary bus facility adjacent to the CTC site across 4th Street. Then we will have an exclusivity clause with the development team for their redevelopment of the site. And again, the MOU is non-binding. Next slide. But what it does do is it creates that path forward. Again, this is a complicated project. Jason mentioned kind of locking in on the design and the location of the bus facility allows us to get into some of that preliminary design, as well as the NEPA process and doing some more specific route planning. We can really start to get into the design with also locking in on some of the MOU points, which allows us to really work towards the actual joint development agreement for the actual construction and development. So again, you will see this come multiple times in front of you, but we're just trying to inch it along and how we're spending money, how we're looking at the project through these various lenses. There will continue to be public outreach, as I think Jason said. So as it relates to CTC, one of the things that the Transportation Planning and Development Committee did today was take an action to refer this to council. If you all have other questions about the CTC project, and council, we can come back to this at the end, let us hear them. We're happy to answer them, but we want to continue to try to move this forward. I'm going to go from here into the sponsorship and branding piece, so we can come back to that committee action piece.
And if I can just give a 2-minute commercial for those who may be watching, this is first and foremost a transportation project.
Correct.
And the the Transportation Committee met for an hour and a half this morning. Councilmember Driggs is the chairman of the Transportation Committee, and all of the transportation-related questions, discussions, concerns were asked and answered in that session. And so I encourage those who want to hear that to go online and watch the Transportation Committee meeting that was held this morning. This next segment will talk mostly about the economic development aspect of this project. So if you hear us not talking about the end users and the riders and the construction, those conversations were held this morning at our Transportation Committee meeting, and I just wanted to kind of preface this conversation so that we won't get a whole lot of emails and phone calls. Ms. Dotson.
Great. Thank you. So with that, as we talk about the practice facility, what we have here is what's become a really unique opportunity. If we think about investments that we made in the arena, and we can go to the next slide and pull up the video, but also the discussion about CTC. These started simultaneously, and now we're trying to build them together so that we better integrate the district. So I recognize it's a little bit grainy to see, but if you think about what opportunities we have here for an enhanced experience for the visitors to Spectrum Arena, for the transit riders, as well as to the community as a whole. Creating this district isn't something new. I said earlier today that I think it's been in area plans since the 90s. I know it's in the 2040 Center City Partners Plan or Center City Plan. So kind of creating this Festival Street with Brevard, better integrating around Spectrum Arena and the development is not a new concept. What the opportunity we have in front of us right now, if we can go to the next slide, is really being intentional about it, right? We're at the beginning of the design of a lot of these things. And if we're intentional about it, we really can create something that's unique and special for our citizens and Center City as a whole. Next 2 slides. It's all right. So as we think about the district, we think about, I'm just going to keep talking so we can move slides because I know time is of the essence here. If we think about the district, part of the lease extension for the Hornets was the practice facility and having a new performance enhancement center. And so that conversation has moved around. And if you remember last summer, we said that option A was to integrate it into CTC and the redevelopment of CTC. And we kind of took an initial look of how that kind of could fit into the overall development. But then we also talked about having a backup alternate, which I'll get to in this. And all of that together could create a district, which was a new revenue source. District concepts aren't new. You see them in other places, Dallas, Georgia Street in Indianapolis. We've all heard about the Deer District in Milwaukee. These aren't new. It's really about how do you integrate the adjacent developments and the public space into creating something that's special and unique. Another piece that is new on it is this opportunity to create a new revenue source from it. And if we're intentional about how we work with our partners in this, then I think we have a unique opportunity to work through what we'll have here.
No pressure.
Yeah. There we go.
Alexis to save the day. Not
Wait for it.
It's probably not going to happen. You need to restart.
This is the quietest I've ever been.
So I can sing if you guys want me to, or hum a little something, I'm not sure. Or we can talk about that exciting reception Center City Partners had last week, where they talked about all the amazing things they're doing in Uptown and South Boulevard, and, you know, we can talk about that. Yeah, we have our folks from the International Cabinet that's always
Yeah.
here.
Thank you.
Trying to leverage what we do to help with business recruitment internationally and a focus on international business. So we can talk about that.
Cannot sing though.
I can. I would not do that. I would not do that. So, is there any way, Tracy, we can just talk through the presentation? I know.
Mr. Chair, could I ask one or two questions on what we've heard so far while we wait?
That might be appropriate.
That's fine.
Go for it.
Okay. So looking at this funding structure, the transit facility will be owned by CATS, right? Do we know what the value is of that? Do we have a number that's connected with the property that CATS will own?
I don't know that we have a future value for it. No, I mean, what we've really been looking at is the cost of it and what are the various funding streams, but I don't know that we have a future value for it.
So looking at this structure, we've got an asset that belongs to CATS of $27 million that is being contributed in the overall funding structure. We have CATS $12 million of their capacity for capital projects. And then we also have the $15 million RAISE grant. The point that I've been making is that when you look at the TIG and the COPS and the CIP, those are general fund funding sources. I can see a justification for that to the extent that this is economic development as well as transit. But as you know, I made the point earlier that I think we ought to consider the possibility of refinancing the COPS
I don't see
or
anything
the
happening already,
CIP
just resetting.
in order to recapture.
Yeah, I just have one screen
Yeah, okay.
on my view.
Okay. I didn't know what was going on. They were just waiting on the.
I think they were resetting. Yeah, I think they were resetting the WebEx.
Gotcha. Okay.
But
Sorry about that. WebEx has crashed 3 times almost.
Okay, if we could go back really quick, like one or two slides.
Finish my sentence. So please keep in mind that we want to try to recapture capacity for the general fund as the sales tax revenues become available for transit.
Yep,
Thank
we
you.
got that. Thank you. So again, just want to show you a couple of images. We can go to the next slide. Just think about what this could be in terms of a district, in terms of a community gathering space. We have a lot of assets that if we plan them right and we design them right, we could create something really special here that feels integrated in this district. Next slide. So if you remember, our partnership with the Hornets was $215 million out of tourism funds. That's more specifically spent on the Spectrum Arena site, as well as the $60 million for the Performance Enhancement Center. And all of that together is what got us to a lease extension to 2045. Next slide. So I want you to think about how the practice facility integrates into the larger development. As Councilmember Graham said, this is CTC is a transit project first. But as we looked at this, we looked at the opportunity. Could the practice facility almost slide in? Some people refer to it almost like as a piece of salami in a sandwich. Slide into the overall development. And what you'll see here is that we have the ability, in the purple, we have the ability to put the courts in between 2 towers that would sit above it, and that would sit on top of the parking. All of this, with the location now of the transit concourse, allows the retail to be able to flow out and really open up to Brevard Street and Trade Street and create that activity that we would want to see across from Spectrum Arena. Next slide. Here's just a quick floor plan of the PEC. We've been running simultaneously since last summer with the Hornets on doing and documenting everything in the agreement with them, but also designing what the practice facility would look like. How does it integrate into the CTC development? And so that has a team that is working on that. First level here, you will see locker rooms, treatment rooms, coach's office, equipment rooms, team dining hall, a kitchen, therapy area, and even looking at an outdoor training area. Next slide, excuse me, which would be the second level, incorporates more flex rooms as well as executive office space. Next slide. And what we've been doing with this design is also benchmarking against what other facilities in the NBA have done as they've come online, looking at it from a square footage as well as a cost. We're also kind of comparing that cost of what it takes at CTC for what scenario B would be, if we can go to the next slide, which is the gravel lot. So we have looked at that lot. That is a backup option. We own that site, should it not fit in CTC. And so kind of the way that we've talked to the Hornets is let's work through the things at the arena, let's work through the design of the practice facility, and if for some reason it doesn't work at CTC, then we'll pivot and we have an option B to work on. Next slide. Now here's really the meat of what I want to get into, and I'm sorry this is coming across a little bit dark on here. The opportunity to create a new revenue source in being thoughtful about this district is something that is new to us. But what we see is it does create this opportunity for key stakeholders to reimagine the area and the surrounding blocks of this portion of Uptown. The city can work with top corporations to make a true community impact in creating more synergy for engagement and foster diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in our Uptown. With the investment, we also think that rethinking this district concept is a potential new revenue source, and we'll get into it a little bit more of where those revenue sources can come from. I'm going to start to tag team a little bit here with Sean, but again, we want to spend a little bit of time walking you through this, just because we know that this district concept is new. Sean, you want to walk us through kind of the mission and the purpose?
Yeah, thanks, Tracy. And first off, sorry, go ahead.
I just want to make sure Sean's background.
Oh yeah, Sean, you want to give? I think you can give a little bit on him and IPG.
Yeah. Yeah, first off, thanks for having me, and pleasure speaking to everybody. Councilman Driggs, pleasure to see you again. I know since we last met in October, time has definitely gone by quickly, but I work at a company, Innovative Partnerships Group. We're based in Los Angeles, and we're a partnership marketing agency that we've worked a lot in the sports and entertainment field in terms of working with different teams and different rights holders to find stadium naming rights and different large-scale partnerships. But we've also worked a lot in the mixed-use development space. And so happy to have worked with Tracy and team really over the last year plus in terms of looking at this, one part doing evaluation, doing a commercial sales strategy. So our company, we're multifaceted in terms of building the strategy from a consulting angle, but also from a sales perspective, being able to get out there and get into market to help from the corporate sponsorship program. So we'll be able to go in a lot more in depth in terms of what we've done, but that's just a little bit of background. So from, go
ahead, Sean.
Sure. Yeah. So one of the things we've worked, in terms of districts, they've been associated with sports complexes. Pretty much any new sports development you're going to see is going to have some type of district built around it going forward. But there have also been districts we've worked with that are not sports related. And those have come in Tampa, Nashville, Memphis, the Bay Area as well. And really we've seen what has worked well as things that have not worked out. And one of the things that has worked really well, and we'll get into some examples in a minute, but is really defining what does everybody want this district to represent? Tracy mentioned integration, and I think that's really one of the key words in terms of bringing in potential corporate partners that can help really create a vibrant district. And we think in terms of the city of Charlotte, we really wanted to be authentic to the city, to the area, and to those corporate partners. So a few of the personas that we came up with and ideated on: mobility, obviously dealing with the transit center and rethinking public transportation in Charlotte. Sustainability, obviously extremely important in terms of what all cities are starting to do across the U.S. But how can we work to not only bring companies in that can help increase what we're doing from a natural resource perspective, but also provide education. And then really from a community perspective, anybody that we want to partner and bring in really should be helping these programs and platforms that we want to develop alongside everybody in this room to really create that vibrant and unique aspect of the district. And then finally, sports and entertainment, obviously with the practice center being there, which we'll get into, and Charlotte with its financial resources and the history as one of the true and main financial centers of the country, integrating potential technology integrations, fintech, et cetera. So it's really defining what we want the district to be and how do we do that authentically.
Yeah, and Councilmember Driggs, I know you brought up at one point last summer, you said, how do we know that we're going to protect the interest of the city as we look at potential partners? Kind of putting up these guardrails starts to do that. If we can go to the next slide. But what also does this is recognizing that we have to work with our key stakeholders. And this is just the start of who the stakeholders are, right? But we have to think about, as we bring in companies to become a part of this district, are we not making sure that we don't conflict with the Hornets, making sure that it's in the right interest of what the council wants to see, working with our development partners at CTC, working with CATS, and really being strategic about how all of this weaves together. Next slide.
There are definitely a few stakeholders involved, and the great thing about this is the early discussions that you guys have been having. More often than not, these are had too late, and it almost decreases the opportunities for certain categories of companies to integrate and involve themselves. So the fact that these are being held and trying to organize all stakeholder interests will definitely help the success of this potential project.
Thanks, Sean. So let's start in the next slide of kind of where we go from here. And it's really to identify those corporate partners with a relationship to community and mission-driven initiatives that we just talked about in some of the personas. And then recognizing that within this district, to start with, we even have several kind of high-value assets, and then we can grow that as the district also grows. So let's talk a little bit about what we think the district is. And I really want you to focus on what's in phase one, and so the blue and kind of purple. The other phases are to come, but if you remember today, we were talking about the development that's now proposed beside the convention center. So you can start to see by the map how all of these things just really can start to weave together between Brevard Street, between the rail trail, and even Trade Street and beyond. But we think that because you have enhancements at Spectrum Arena, because we're talking about CTC, you've got the Moxie Hotel going on across the street, you've got Midnight Diner that's coming over there, and you've got the repositioning of the Epicenter. There's a lot there to talk about how that can start to grow and create something that's really exciting, and really start to bring what's happening in the community to a core location, as well as bring what's happening in the arena outside of its four walls. We go to the next slide, and Sean, I'll let you talk a little bit more from kind of drilling in a little bit more on this one.
Yeah, and I think one thing just to add is right now with Spectrum Center, 41 NBA games plus concerts, et cetera. But really the goal of the district is to create maybe not 365, but you're really creating a year-round experience and wanting to bring in people from the community that can come in, whether it is the Festival Street on Brevard or some of these high-value assets. But I think it's really important as we go through from a time in a second, and how do we position that for success with potential community and corporate champions? And then where do we want to look to integrate, whether that's the Moxie Hotel that's being built right across the street or some of the other developments, but how do we integrate everything in together to make it seem very unified? I think the one thing you want to avoid is having almost a hodgepodge of different areas, and that really defeats calling it a district, and it defeats the ability to generate some of that potential revenue from a sponsorship perspective.
So Sean mentioned Brevard Street, and just think about what that could become. You see that on there. I mean, if we're strategic about it, with CTC and kind of rethinking the way how the buses are coming in and off of 3rd Street, 4th Street, and circulating around there, we could have the opportunity to do some really special things along Brevard Street, closing it when the arena has events, or closing portions of it when the arena has events, or doing a farmer's market there, or street fairs there. Sean, do you have anything to add? Sorry.
No, I think that, part of it is bringing people in outside of game day or event days, or bringing families together and creating those opportunities. And I think that could definitely exist on Brevard Street and really be a unique and authentic tie-in to the development going to the transit center, to the performance center, and then potentially what else can go around that area as time progresses.
Next slide. And Sean, I'll let you speak to this one in a little bit more detail.
So, sounds good. So this is really the meat of what we've been thinking about just from our experiences, either on the district side. We've also represented certain brands that have signed district partnerships. And how do you generate and maximize revenue, but doing it in an authentic way? I think we all want to avoid, I know the NASCAR Hall of Fame is right down the street, but I think we want to avoid almost a NASCAR feel where you're just seeing a lot of different brands slapped around, or a lot of LED signage. So it's really looking tastefully at bringing in a select amount of partners. And what we've ideated on, potentially the district naming rights would really be almost the top tier partner. So it could be, for example, the Bank of America district, or the district presented by Bank of America. And part of that would be the integration into the transit center, potential office space as well, given what will be going in. But then you move down to the performance center. And right now, there's currently 20 out of the 30 NBA teams, there's 21 naming rights, performance center naming right partnerships. And actually almost half of those are healthcare opportunities. So even though this would be inside the building and wouldn't have a lot of outward visibility, it does provide a fantastic opportunity to either increase a partnership that already exists with the Hornets, or bring in somebody totally new. One example that we're pretty familiar with is out in Phoenix. It's called the Verizon 5G Performance Center, and it was a new build, and Verizon was able to bring in their technologies to really utilize that almost as a global showcase for what they're doing. And I think that will serve as really one of the main high value assets to go out to market with. And then finally, potentially founding partners. So with that, Tracy mentioned the creation of potential assets. And could this be a food hall, or the festival street, the rail trail, a park? But trying to create these almost tangible opportunities for companies to come in, put their name on, but then more importantly, build certain programs and platforms from a community perspective. Volunteer days, STEM days, sustainability focuses, things of that nature that these corporate partners can attach their names to, get their employees involved in, and once again, bring out that sense of a true district and vibrant feel. What we've talked about, you would have one district naming rights partner ideally, one performance center naming rights partner, and from our projections, we were looking at really 3 to 5 founding partners. So once again, trying to make sure that we're not overdoing it, that we're trying to be conservative, but also realistic in terms of what companies could come in and how they could look, whether that could be healthcare, financial services, insurance, et cetera, but really doing a deep dive across different key categories in Charlotte.
Next slide. Can we go ahead and go to the next slide? Because it shows a little bit of what Sean was just talking about with the numbers and kind of how we're thinking about this. John, you have
Yes, I know there have been
go ahead.
Questions on the 60 million number, and a lot of that came from really it was a 10-year, looking out 10 years, and you can see in this table the district naming rights, our projections were starting at potentially $2 million a year, performance center at $1.25 million a year. And then from a founding partner perspective, these would really vary based on what could be provided. But really going from the low to mid 6 figures up to I think potentially $1 million a year in these founding partnerships. And that was really looking out 10 years, looking at 8 potential partners, knowing that not every single year is going to have a partnership. I think from a district and performance center perspective, you'd be looking at long-term 10-year plus deals, but from a founding partner perspective, they could be 3 to 5 year deals. And one of the things we updated was really trying to align this, instead of looking out 10 years, really looking out to 2045, and how could this look? So that's some of the numbers you'll see in that projected total.
Yep.
And a lot of these come from our experiences working with brands to sign district deals, working with different teams in the marketplace to understand what's a traditional or conservative value from a performance center, as well as from a district perspective, what has worked and what hasn't worked. So my background, I'm a CPA, I come from the accounting world. I err on the side of being more conservative, and I feel that these are all realistic targets versus numbers that we're trying to show that look good, but then in reality will be hard to deliver. So this slide right here is just a little bit more detail. You can really see the district and the performance center, the starting amounts. Normally in these types of long-term partnerships, you'll have an escalator, whether it could be anywhere from 2 to 3% to CPI in terms of a year-over-year increase. And then from a founding partner perspective, is really looking at, you can see some blank spots in there. And that was to reflect, maybe this is a 5-year deal. It's not going to be a continuous cycle. So you do have a few potential open areas where there might not be all 5 partners, or there might be, you're going through a renewal phase. But this is really a projection in terms of utilizing those starting values and looking out to 2045 in terms of what this district could look like from a corporate sponsorship perspective.
Let's go ahead and go to, I know we're running short on time, so let's go ahead and go to the next slide. I'll do this quickly. Sean talked about kind of founding partners and ideas and kind of personas, but then also what were some of the things that we could get into with the naming rights. Next slide. And then a little bit deeper into that, unique attributes and landmarks. We can think about marquee signage or first look kind of off the market leasing. We have existing office buildings in this district already. Digital signage, other landmark opportunities. This isn't intended to be exactly what we're talking, like specific of we're looking at going over the street or something like that. Just trying to demonstrate that we are thinking about unique ways to really define what the district is. Next slide. And this is one that I really wanted Sean to spend a minute on because, again, they do this all over the world. And I think that seeing a real example firsthand and how it works is important. And then we will wrap it up.
Sure. So for this one, it's a little different in terms of the size. Obviously, a little bit bigger right off the bat. But at the same time, last year we worked with Ascension St. Thomas, one of the healthcare companies in Nashville. And we helped them become really the 3rd founding partner of Nashville Yards. But right now, this is an 18-acre project. It's under development. It started really right when COVID began. So there were some starts and stops with both the construction as well as going out to market. The goal is for them to be finished development by 2025. So you can see at the bottom with some of these examples, they've already signed 3 founding partners in 2021 and 2022. And a lot of these don't, from a financial perspective, there's some assets provided, but they wanted to get out ahead of everything. And I think that's what we will want to do with this, not waiting until the end, but you have to get out and market initially. The nice thing about Nashville Yards as an example is that it really does create a true district feel. It's one confined, almost confined space. They have an amphitheater as one of their primary assets. They have office space. And they've really been looking at finding exclusivity across different companies. So, for instance, Ascension St. Thomas is the official or the exclusive healthcare provider of Nashville Yards. Nashville is a very competitive market, just like Charlotte from a healthcare perspective. So that blocks out all their competition from having a ground floor clinic, having office space, having LED signage, one of their main assets was a park or open plaza to promote healthy wellness and lifestyle. So this is one I'd urge anybody to take a look at. They do bring in LED signage, but they're doing it tastefully with a certain amount of signs, different styles. It's not going to be almost an LA Live type experience, but something a little more realistic, but also something that can provide that media visibility to partners. And this is one, Tracy probably gets tired of me using this as an example, but it really has worked and really have liked what they've done from a partnership perspective, as well as the commercial sales strategy as well.
Yep. If we go to the next slide and just kind of walk you through where we go from here on this is really working through a timeline of those phases, right? What do we think the various stakeholders that we kind of mentioned that are there today, but then also future stakeholders. We've already started discussions and talking with planning about, does this need its own kind of signage ordinance? What does that want to look like? And really thinking and being strategic about that so that we don't have ambush marketing attempts or, things like that. Again, we want something that's very authentic as we think about it. And that goes to other departments as well, right? CATS has assets in this that we've talked about. How do we work with them? How do we partner with them? And then how do we partner with, and what does that structure look like with some of our other partners like White Point and DART? And then really finalizing the commercial sales program and starting to take this to market, as well as coming back to you all and kind of giving you all those updates. So I know that was a lot, it was quick, but we really wanted you to kind of see firsthand where that piece is. And we've got a lot of things that are moving in parallel together to try to move the project and the district as a whole together.
Thank you, Tracy. We'll take some questions now, but I just want to remind the council, the room has to be flipped for the 4 o'clock Housing Committee meeting. So if you can make your questions brief and the response even briefer, so we can accommodate what's coming behind us. Councilmember Drakes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Wanted to quickly note the Transportation Committee did meet this morning to discuss this. We talked about the impact on the bus system, the temporary bus center that would be needed and how that would work. We talked about the situation of the businesses that are currently located in the transportation center and whether or not there would be an accommodation for them in the temporary site and at the permanent site subsequently. And we looked at the finance structure. So in our committee, looking from that vantage point, there was a unanimous vote that we continue to pursue a memorandum of understanding, a non-binding agreement. So as far as that committee is concerned, we basically instructed the staff to keep going. We would see the final agreement and have other opportunities to learn more and vote, but the idea was this was interim. On this, I just wanted to say, for one, the developer pays for the tower. Let's just be clear about that. The numbers you've heard are related to the bus center. We have a liability for $60 million as a result of our agreement with the team. We're not making a new spending decision as it relates to that. So, and I believe that from what I heard, we would have a subsequent opportunity to vote for the final terms of the corporate sponsorship agreements. So at the moment, I think the question for us is there anybody that thinks that we should not continue to go in this direction? Or conversely, should we go in this direction? And personally, I'm supportive of moving to the next step. Thank you.
Councilmember Winston, then I'll jump in.
Thank you. So a comment that Mr. Moran said at the end, as it was stated, we've got to remember that at the center of this district or in this district is a transit project, right? The CTC. So as we're thinking of naming rights and exclusivity, I think we should really kind of understand what the needs are of a transit rider, right? So like he mentioned in Nashville, if you have the exclusive Ascension St. Thomas, which, has the medical provider of the district, so that disallows other products and services, right? Well, what if, like, for instance, if, let's just say we have 2 hospital systems, if Atrium bought it, during the pandemic, we know that Novant was an important partner in our transit centers, providing services to those customers. So I guess as we're kind of putting guardrails around these district personas, I don't think we would want to do something that would limit the ability to serve those transit riders, right? So I don't know necessarily how you do that and or exactly how you do that and not kind of eliminate unforced errors as we move forward with it. But let's kind of make sure that we're centering the needs of those folks and we're not excluding innovations and services that they need in the district.
Thank you, Councilmember Winston. I got a couple of comments. First of all, Ed and I work really great together because Ed can worry about the numbers and I can talk about the vision, right? And I think the vision for what we're about to do here, if you can go back to the slide where it shows all the, how the Inconnect, phase 1, phase 2, shows the kind of big picture of it all. It's really significant in terms of the possibilities that we have to do. I think another slide.
This one, the map.
Yeah, the map. For that particular district, the work that we are beginning to do with the Spectrum Center and hopefully a relocation of the practice facility in concert with the CTC Center, the light rail, which runs right down the middle of that as well. The Epic Center, and I had the opportunity to meet with the developers at the Center City Partners reception last week. They're really, really excited about their own project and how that connects to what we're about to do with a potential district. And obviously what we're about to do with Brevard Street. So all of it, from my perspective, makes really, really good sense that we should march towards it. And as you look at Uptown from 30,000 feet in terms of the potential of the Silver Line, the Gateway Station Center itself, anything that we may or may not do with Bank of America Stadium, that in itself creates another district opportunity as well. And so there's a lot of connecting the dots. Certainly this is a big dot in itself. But when you look at what we're doing in Uptown and the growth of South End, there's a lot happening, right? And a lot that produces revenue for our community that we get to deploy elsewhere to support what we're doing. So I'm really excited about the steps that we're taking. Obviously, the devil is in the details, right? And there's a lot of details, vision details, financial details that we have to consider as we move forward. But I think this is a really good first step. I agree with the Vice Chairman. I would love to move forward in giving staff that type of authorization to do that, to do it carefully, awfully. There's a lot of conversations that we need to have with community members, end users, Councilmember Winston, obviously the Hornets themselves will play a major role in what we're doing here. But all of this is really, really exciting. A couple of points. One, and the Mayor Pro Tem will love this, parking, right? I don't think a district should have a whole lot of vehicle traffic, right? Right. So as we begin to kind of talk about this thing, how does vehicle traffic is introduced in that district, right? People should be able to walk around and, whatever, right? So, and I'm a guy that thinks we still need parking decks. So, but I realize what we're trying to create here. And so just top of mind as we begin to think about designing this thing out, how this can be a walkable district where mobility is the streetcar and the transit lines and not vehicle traffic. So that's something that's just kind of, for me, is important. And we touched on it. I won't take too much time about the branding and the corporations that are already in the district, how they will interface with future opportunities. Sean, I'm not sure how that works where folks who are already living, working, and playing there in the district, as well as how do we brand the district so it doesn't look like gaudy, right? That is not this
Right.
LED lights and.
It's not Times Square.
Yeah, it's not Times Square, right? So how do we do it? We do it in a way that protects the integrity of our uptown, and certainly Center City Partners are going to play a key role in terms of making sure that we put all the puzzle pieces together. But I think this is a good first step. Obviously, there's a lot more work to do, but certainly I like the way this is starting. Ms. Mullane, any questions, comments? You don't have to. I just want to
No,
give you the last word.
Oh, well, no, thank you, Mr. Chair. It looks exciting. I mean, you know, coming in, looking at it, I'm excited to, you know, see what develops from the project. But I don't have any more comments outside of, you know, the chair and the vice chair. I think they've had some great additions. I trust them both, especially this guy when it comes to numbers. I lean on him a whole lot.
I'm not just an accountant.
And so from my perspective, it looks good.
Ms. Wallington, are you still with us? Give you any last words before we leave?
I am, nope, I don't have anything on this right now.
All right. So again,
Do we want to take an action,
Ms.
or
Dodson?
recommendation, or anything in this meeting? Did you want?
he's full of action today.
I know, I like to end it. It's great, let's go for it.
End things. I like to wrap up conversations.
Well, and
Are we
I
done?
I think
To
if
this
you
level?
do anything, you would just say to move, you know, to move it, continue to move the MOU discussions and the CTC discussions.
I don't think we need a motion. I think it's a understanding that this conversation is moving forward. We took action in transportation earlier today, which is probably the most important one. So I think we're moving in the right direction, and I think we're all good.
Great.
All right, everybody's good? Thank you. Thanks, Sean. This meeting
you
is
for your
officially
time.
adjourned.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.